and for a brief moment I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because he was here. Dread because something heavy clung to his expression, a weight I couldn't yet name. "Grandma," he said, his voice low and a little hoarse, as though the night itself had worn it down. "Can I come in?" There was no hesitation in me then. I stepped aside, motioning him in, and closed the door against the night. The living room seemed to shrink as he walked in. It had been so long since I'd seen him like this, without the shield of his friends, without the rushed excuses that had kept him away. He stood in the middle of the room, tall and restless, his fingers drumming against his thigh, as though he were trying to release a nervous energy he couldn't contain. "Sit down, Daniel," I urged gently, pointing toward the sofa. But he shook his head at first, pacing a little before finally sinking down onto the edge of the cushions. His shoulders slumped forward, his face half hidden in shadow. I sat across from him, studying him in the quiet. My heart ached at the sight of him, because even though he was grown now, I still remembered the child he had once been. The boy who used to run through my kitchen with sticky fingers, who used to fall asleep on my lap during evening television. The boy who, somewhere along the way, had drifted from me into a distance I could never quite bridge. The silence stretched between us. I didn't push him. I knew better than to rush words that take courage to form. I simply waited, my hands folded in my lap, the clock ticking softly in the background. Finally, he lifted his gaze, and when our eyes met, I saw the rawness there. "Grandma," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't even know where to start. I've made so many mistakes." I leaned forward, my breath catching. "Then start here," I said softly. "Start with me." The words came haltingly at first, like stones tumbling out of a too tight hand. He spoke of choices that had taken him down roads I wished he hadn't walked. People he had trusted who hadn't deserved it. Decisions that had left him feeling more lost than found. And as he spoke, I didn't interrupt. I didn't lecture or scold. I just listened. Listening is a strange kind of love, I think. It's quieter than words of advice, but sometimes it carries more weight. As he poured out his story, his shoulders began to loosen, as though the act of unburdening himself was finally giving him back his breath. At one point, he paused and looked at me, his eyes glistening. "I didn't know where else to go," he admitted. "I thought you'd be disappointed. I thought maybe you'd turn me away." I reached across the small space between us and took his hand. It was bigger now, the hand of a man, but I could still feel the faint echo of the boy's hand I used to guide across busy streets. "You'll never have to wonder if my door is open to you," I said. "Not tonight, not ever." He swallowed hard, blinking fast. "I don't deserve that," he whispered. "Maybe not," I answered honestly. "But love isn't about what we deserve. It's about what we choose, and I choose you." The tears that welled in his eyes then caught the lamplight, and for a moment I thought I could see the boy he had once been, peeking through the storm of the man he had become. We sat like that for a long while, the night stretching around us, the house holding its breath. He spoke more, of regrets, of longing, of a future he didn't know how to face. And I gave him what I could, not solutions, not promises, but the kind of presence that says, "You are not alone in this world." And as the minutes turned to hours, I felt something shift inside me too. This wasn't just his confession. It was my chance to remember that even in the broken spaces of our lives, connection has the power to mend. When the clock finally chimed, marking the small hours of morning, I realized something simple but profound, that one late-night knock had carried not just my grandson to my door, but also a truth I had almost forgotten. That love, given freely, can change everything. The hours after midnight have a way of softening hard edges. The house grew quiet around us. The lamp made a little island of light on the rug, and Daniel's words settled in the room like a truth that had finally found the courage to sit down. I could see how tired he was in the slope of his shoulders, and the way his hands wouldn't quite rest, opening and closing, as if they were searching for something to hold. I didn't press. I warmed the tea again and brought him a blanket he used as a boy for movie nights, faded blue, a little pilled, soft as memory. He smiled at it in a half-embarrassed way and pulled it across his lap. That small smile told me we still had a bridge, even if it shook in the wind. "Grandma," he said after a while, "I didn't just drift. I ran. I ran from conversations I should have had. I ran from bills. I ran from telling Dad the truth. I let the steam from my mug find my face and waited, the way you wait for bread to rise. You can't force it. You can only make the room warm and patient." He stared into his hands. "I dropped out 2 months ago. I told everyone I was doing online classes, but I wasn't. I tried a business with a friend, used credit I didn't have, promises I couldn't keep. It looked good for a week. Then it didn't. He left when it got hard. I kept pretending it would all turn around. It didn't." His voice went thin, boyish for a moment. "Dad called me a stranger in my own house tonight. I said things back I wish I could unsay. It would have been easy to rush in with advice. It would have been easy to say I'd seen it coming. But easy isn't the same as kind. So I asked the only question that mattered in that moment. 'What do you want from me, Daniel?' He looked up, surprised. Maybe he expected a lecture. Maybe he expected rescue. 'I want to learn how to be the kind of man who doesn't run,' he said, and then the rest tumbled out, raw and unpolished. 'I want to talk to Dad without it turning into a fight. I want to make a plan that's honest. And I want to do it with you watching me, so I don't take the easy way out.' The certainty of that last part, so simple, so brave, hit me right in the chest. The thing that changed everything wasn't a confession about debt or the mess he'd made. It was the humility to ask for accountability. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Real is where you can plant something. 'Okay,' I said, setting my cup down. 'Then we'll begin with something true. Not big, not flashy. Something small we can finish before sunrise. Stand up.' He blinked, confused, but stood. I led him to the front door and opened it to the night. The air had cooled and smelled faintly of wet earth and the pine tree that leans a little toward the porch. At the top step, I pointed at the second board from the end. The nails had worked up over the last month, and the board clicked when you put weight on it. 'This has wobbled all summer,' I said. 'I've stepped around it instead of fixing it.' Without a word, he went to the shed and found my old toolkit. He tested the board with his heel, measured it with his hand like I used to see his grandfather do, just the memory of a man measuring with a palm, and something steadied in me. He pried the board up gently, cleaned the groove with a little brush, and reset the nails. He checked the squeak again, frowned, and swapped the nails for screws. Tight, firm, done. We didn't speak for a few minutes. He set the tools down and pressed his weight on the step with both feet. No click, no give. He looked at me and I nodded, feeling the kind of pride that isn't loud. We went back inside, and in the doorway he paused, almost sheepish. I should have asked before I just did that. I smiled. 'You did ask,' I said. 'Not with words, but you asked, and I agreed when I stepped aside.' Consent, even for small things, is a practice. Tonight it would be our rule. We would keep asking. We would keep agreeing on the next right thing. The clock blinked past 2. I made us eggs and toast because breakfast has a way of giving courage to mornings that come too soon. He ate like someone who hadn't tasted simple food in a while, grateful and quiet. When he finished, he wiped the crumbs with his thumb and said, "Voice steady now. Can you be there when I call Dad? Not to speak for me, just there." "Yes," I said. "But the words will be yours." He nodded. Then he surprised me. "Not yet. I want to sleep an hour so I don't sound like a storm." He folded the blanket, careful as a prayer, and lay down on the sofa with his shoes neatly by the coffee table. He was asleep in minutes, his face smoothed into something young and ordinary. I sat in the armchair and watched the lamp turn the dust into a soft galaxy. I thought of my own son, Daniel's father, and the day he moved out, how his adult life had come on all at once, quick and clumsy, like a boy wearing his father's coat. We're always fitting into ourselves, I suppose, and the seams rub where we're growing. Dawn took the long road to the windows. The first birds made their scattered comments, and the sky lightened from black to blue as if deciding, yes, another day. I brewed coffee in the old percolator because it fills the kitchen with a sound that says home. When Daniel woke, he looked better, not fixed, not different, just more himself. "Coffee," I offered. "Please," he said, and that simple word, please, was another board set firm. We set the phone on speaker in the middle of the table and agreed on a plan before we dialed. He would say he was safe. He would say he wanted to take responsibility. I would listen. If voices rose, we would pause. If either of them needed a break, they could say, "I need a minute," and we would honor it. Simple rules, hard to keep. Worth it. He dialed. The ring stretched long enough to make us both second-guess this bravery, and then my son's voice came on, rough with sleep and worry. "Hello?" Daniel spoke first. "Dad, I'm at Grandma's." "I'm okay. I'm calling because I want to tell the truth and make a plan. Can you talk?" Silence. Then a breath. "Yes," my son said, guarded. "I can talk." They began like men, feeling for the bottom of a dark pool with their toes, slow, cautious, ready to pull back if it was colder than expected. Daniel didn't defend himself. He stated things plainly. "I lied. I owe money. I left angry. I said cruel things. I'm sorry. I want to fix this." My son's voice hardened, then softened, then hardened again, like a man opening and closing a hand without meaning to. "You lied to your mother. You lied to me. I don't even know what to say to that." "Say that you'll meet me with Grandma here," Daniel answered, surprising me, and I think himself. Not to solve it, just to hear me and set a first step. More silence. I could see my son in my mind, standing in his kitchen, the same percolator on the counter that I'd bought him when he first moved out, his jaw set in that way he got from me, his temper quick and his love quicker. When he spoke again, his voice was tired and human. "I'll be there in an hour." We had a single hour to be ready. Ready didn't mean perform. It meant that the table would be cleared, the coffee poured, the blanket folded, the truth close at hand. Daniel asked if he could shower. I said yes. He asked if I would sit at the table within reach. I said yes. He asked if, when he hesitated, I would touch his sleeve to remind him to keep going. I said yes. Consent. Agreement. A rhythm starting to form. When my son arrived, the sound of his truck in the driveway was a memory with a motor attached. He didn't slam the door, which told me more than any words. He came in, eyes flicking between us, wary and wounded. I saw how much he loved his boy in the way he looked anywhere but directly at him at first, like the sun would scorch if he met it too soon. I made coffee, I said, not as an offering to distract, but as a way to make the room less sharp. We sat. The table between them felt like both a border and a bridge. Daniel began, and I did what I'd promised. I kept my hand close enough for him to find when he stumbled. He took responsibility without decorating it, without trying to share the blame. He named numbers, not to overwhelm, but to refuse the fog that shame prefers. He said he would call the credit company this afternoon and arrange a plan. He said he would find work this week and show his pay stubs. He said he would live here for a month if I agreed, paying me what he could and helping with repairs, and then move to a place he could afford with his own name on the lease. He asked for nothing else, not to have the slate wiped clean, not to be told it was all okay, just for the chance to change in full daylight. My son listened, jaw working. Then he did his own brave thing. "I shouldn't have called you a stranger," he said, the words landing heavy and honest. "I was scared, and it came out mean. I'm sorry." He rubbed his forehead and looked from Daniel to me and back. "I can help you make the calls today, but I won't make them for you." "That's fair," Daniel said. They sat in the quiet that comes after a thunderstorm clears, but the air is still charged. I could feel the moment when we all understood it at once. Love wasn't bailing someone out. Love was sitting in the room while they learned to fix what they could reach and accept what they couldn't. We were all a little relieved and a little terrified. That's how you know you're at the real beginning of something. We spent the afternoon doing small things with large meaning. Daniel swept the porch without being asked and oiled the hinge on the screen door that had whined for months. He wrote down every bill. He called the credit company with his father on one side of him and me on the other, and when the hold music made him grimace, he stayed on the line. He took notes in his own handwriting, dates and amounts, and the name of the woman on the phone, who sounded brisk but not unkind. He didn't argue when she said the first payment was due next week. He asked what would happen if he missed it, and then said clearly, "I won't." We ate sandwiches at the table and made a simple budget that didn't pretend money could stretch more than it could. My son suggested a job at his friend's hardware store. He warned there wouldn't be special treatment. Daniel said that was exactly what he needed. The plan was not dramatic. It would not make a movie. It would make a life. In the evening, after my son left with a hug that started stiff and ended true, Daniel and I walked out to the mailbox together. The new step held under our weight without a sound. Fireflies stitched little green notes in the shrubs. He kept his hands in his pockets for a while, and then took them out, like a man remembering he could. "I was afraid coming here," he said. "I thought you'd be disappointed in me." "I am," I said, and he winced until I went on. "Disappointed because you suffered alone. You don't have to, not anymore. Not if you choose not to." I touched his sleeve the way I'd promised. "Choosing is a muscle. We'll work it." He nodded, and we stood there in the summer dark, and for a moment I could almost feel time turning a page. Not to a chapter where everything was easy, just to a chapter where we all knew the rules. Tell the truth, ask permission, keep going, repair the boards you can reach. We went inside, and he washed the dinner plates and I dried, and we both marveled at how ordinary and holy that felt. Days will pass, I know. He will have a morning when the weight of the plan will sit heavy on his chest, and he will think of running. He will have a night when he will want to tell a small lie and call it mercy. I will have a day when I will want to fix something for him because it's faster, and I will have to sit on my hands and let him struggle. My son will have a moment when his old anger tries to come back with its easy heat, and he will have to choose not to open the door to it. But we have made a beginning that doesn't depend on perfect days. Before bed, Daniel asked if he could keep the blue blanket for a while. I told him yes, and he folded it and placed it on the arm of the couch in that careful way of his. He turned to go, and then paused. "Grandma," he said, almost shy. "What did Grandpa do when he was scared?" I thought of the man I loved, gone these many years, and the quiet bravery he practiced. He found one small thing he could repair, I said, and he repaired it all the way. Daniel nodded as if I had handed him a tool. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to. He went to sleep with the window cracked just enough to let in the whisper of the pine. I lay awake a little longer, listening to the house breathe. The night before had begun with a knock that startled me. This night ended with a kind of knocking from the inside, a gentle insistence that life keeps offering us doors. Some we shouldn't open, some we should walk through without looking back. Some, like this one, we step across together with our hands out, ready to work. People think changed everything means winning the lottery or hearing a sentence that lifts a curse. Maybe sometimes it does. For me, it meant hearing my grandson ask to be watched while he rebuilt his word. It meant watching my son become the kind of father who could say he was sorry without shrinking. It meant remembering who I am when I'm most useful, not the fixer, not the